All right. And welcome back, you guys, to the Self Selecting Podcast. I am your host, Cory Hagman. Thank you for being here. Thank you for tuning in. Uh, welcome. Welcome, those of you who are new to the channel. I just want to say, those of y'all who are commenting, really means the world. It sounds so like pluggy to kick off a podcast and do the whole like, comment, subscribe. But I just want to say, you guys who do it, I see it, appreciate it. It gets the word out. Uh, really, really, the goal with this is to just help people make better decisions, whether that be related to fat loss, supplementation, lab work, competing, not competing. I just want to do my part so that I can share some of the information that I've learned over the last 10 or so years being in the space. I love what I do. I love the ability to help people build autonomy, gain agency over their body composition. And that really is where this is rooted in. So, I mean, the podcast at this point, it'll be 2 years old in January, whenever this comes out. So maybe it'll be in a couple months. And it means a lot to get y'all's support. It means a lot to see the comments, the ones that are so thoughtful and just encouraging to keep up with it. With that being said, if you cannot get enough, if you want even more, I mean, there's like 2 podcasts that I wait for each week, and I always I watch them as immediately as they come out. And if that's you, if you just feel like, hey, the 8 episodes a month is not enough, I do offer 4 bonus episodes on Patreon, tier 3 each month. I'll be honest, they're audio only. I'm a little more unhinged because I'm able to do them at times where it doesn't take the whole thing. Uh, and they're fun. They're fun. And for some people, even they'll drop their labs in, they'll message me and be like, hey, like this is the issue I'm currently going through. And I'll just kind of take those opportunities, especially if it's one that I get asked about very commonly. And I'll use those episodes to kind of break them down. So $25 a month for 4 more episodes of this, if that's something that you guys are interested in. And for those of you who are on the peptide train, if you are like, hey, there, I've looked, I don't know who to trust. I don't know who to get these things from, how to source them. I mean, first of all, I would do so only with the correct supervision. But the company I go through, I do have a discount code for them, but I was with them well before I had a discount. Like, I ordered hundreds, if not thousands of dollars of product, and then they're like, "Just take this code. Like, just take it because people, like, I know you're sending them our way." Um, Soma Chems, formerly Amino Asylum, they got a lot of what you need. Not steroids. You're shit out of luck if that's what you're looking for here. Uh, I will say though, most of the people who are like starting GLP-1s are typically overpaying. They're going to a doctor, then they're just put on this like cookie cutter program. Somachems has all 3, whether that be retatrutide, tirzepatide, semaglutide, and I mean, they come in pretty high concentration. So you can take your monthly rate if that's a concern to you. If you're just like, I don't really need the individual, the unlicensed medical professional to check in with me every couple months just to get their commission. Somachems, code CORYFIT, CORYFIT, would definitely recommend. Now, what are we diving into today? We have a good one, and this is uh, a common thing that I talk about on this channel because it plagues so many of y'all, and that is overeating, non-adherence, non-compliance. I'm gonna refrain from going the direction of like binging because that isn't within my scope. And like clinically, there is a diagnosis for that, and it's something that you should help. Like you should have a medical professional supervising that treatment. But what about for the individual who just struggles with overeating? Um, that's what I'm diving deep into today. And particularly for the individual who's like, I don't know why I keep doing this. Like, why can't I just stop? It's more reactive and impulsive. I can say, like, you are not alone. It's not a character flaw, and it is a result of a complex web of biology, psychology, and simply modern life. So, hopefully, by the end of this episode, you will understand not only why you overeat, like the complexities of it, but also what you can do about it without relying on willpower alone. So, we're going to start at the physiology. And I mean, it comes down to like your body is designed to eat. Uh, at the center of it all, I mean, your brain is ultimately what's controlling your hunger and your fullness. Um, when you look at the hypothalamus, it is a region that acts largely as a command center for hunger, satiety, energy balance. And it is constantly working to improve efficiencies, but what it wants to do, what your body wants to do versus what you want to do, are not always the same thing. And there are key nuclei within your hypothalamus that are constantly sensing hormone levels in the blood and then signaling, sending different signals to either stop or to start eating. Now, the major hormones that we need to understand, and this isn't going to be a science lesson, I'm going to keep it pretty plain speak: ghrelin, leptin, insulin. There are other ones that also affect hunger and fullness, but we're going to focus on these today. So when you look at ghrelin, which by the way, guys, I have a whole video on hunger signaling to begin with. This is not just a regurgitation of that. This is going to be condensed, but I also want to dig into the behavioral and the food patterns and like really what I see to be the bigger issues when it comes to overeating. Um, anyways, ghrelin, it is released by the stomach. It is that main hunger hormone. So the difference is hunger and then fullness. Now, ghrelin levels rise before meals and they drop after you eat. Now, this signals to your brain to start or to stop seeking food. Now, it doesn't mean that your actions are going to follow suit. And this is oftentimes what happens when people overeat their appetite, outeat what their appetite actually is. Now, hormone number 2, leptin, this is produced in and by fat cells, and it is going to signal fullness, so satiation. Now, when fat stores are high, leptin rises and tells your brain to eat less. So, like intrinsically, you do have a system that is encouraging you to not be overweight. Um, when you lose fat, leptin falls and you get hungrier. So, on the flip side, if you are starving yourself, if you're under eating, there is a system in place that is going to fight you tooth and nail to keep you alive, to keep you healthy. Now, the third one is insulin. Now, this is released in response to eating carbs. Now, insulin also signals fullness, but in people with insulin resistance, especially in individuals who are obese, the brain often ignores this signal. Now, you have different receptors that interact and really home these hormones, and the sensitivity of these receptors varies. They can be influenced genetically. They can also be influenced by lifestyle factors and just repeated bashing of these receptors. Um, Now we also have short-term satiety signals. So when your stomach stretches, mechanical receptors signal fullness. There's peptide YY, CCK, GLP from your intestines that say stop eating. So this is one of the pathways in which GLP-1s, they work on the GLP-1 pathway, work to delay gastric emptying, to suppress appetite. Now, why do these signals fail? You can become resistant. Even with high body fat and lots of leptin, your brain acts as if you're starving, so you keep eating. Emotionally, you can become very non-responsive, very disassociative to these signals. They can be blunt physically, or you can ignore them. There's an act of it being conscious or unconscious there. Now, some people just have a higher baseline ghrelin. Some people do activities that encourage ghrelin to be higher. Some people are in an environment and they create an environment in some cases that encourage ghrelin to be higher. And their ghrelin doesn't drop much even after eating, so they feel hungry more often. Now, hear me when I say this. Chronic stress, so increased cortisol, that raises cravings, especially for high fat, high sugar foods. Um, it can blunt some of that fullness that you feel. I mean, like when you think of anything that drives up cortisol, that cortisol is stress. I have a whole video on the stress hormone and how much do you need of it, how much is too much, what influences it, and how chronically elevated states of cortisol will actually make it really difficult to lose fat and to build muscle and to just be healthy and happy. Um, but there's also this reward system that eating highly palatable food, delicious food, it triggers a dopamine release in the brain. And over time, if you repeatedly overeat, your brain becomes less sensitive to dopamine. You eat more to get the same pleasure. And this is a pattern identical to addiction. Now, highly processed foods are engineered to maximize this response, making them very irresistible. There is a ton of funding from big companies that look into how to make something more craveable, more comforting, more addictive. And within this scope, I mean, like, yes, you also have genetics. We can't ignore that. Some people are born more sensitive to food cues, less sensitive to fullness, more prone to storing fat, and dozens of genes can nudge behaviors of appetite a little bit. And they do create a difference in how easily people overeat. Now, in plain speak, what do I mean by this? It's not always about willpower. There are people who are genetically predisposed to struggle more and have to exert more willpower than someone else. Some people do feel hungrier. Some people get less full. Some people get more pleasure from food because of this wiring. And we can't stop here because when we eat, uh, when we're not hungry, this is a huge problem that many clients I work with, they struggle with. And this enter the psychology aspect. So why does this happen? Why do people use food as a coping mechanism? I mean, there's the emotional eating aspect of it, where stress, sadness, boredom, even happiness, food temporarily numbs or boosts our mood. And some of this is a learned behavior. As kids, I think largely genetics aside, like your food behaviors and what you're shown are going to influence how you approach food, what you deem fullness as, what's appropriate feeding times, what's an appropriate amount. I can say, like, my dad, he did not, he grew up very poor. And he would tell me stories even early on about how there were times where his mom didn't have money to put food on the table. And like it was very scarce. And even when he moved, after he got out of school, there were weeks where he was between checks and he could afford a loaf of bread. And that's what he had to get him through the week. And I understand it now, being a little bit older, is like when you have someone who comes from poverty and in a scarcity state, there typically is an overcompensation. And that very much was the case with me. I mean, like, he loved me, he loves me. He's still alive. I don't know why I said it like that. Um, but growing up, he encouraged me to play sports. He encouraged me to be active, had a lot of energy. And it was very often he wanted to treat me and use food as a reward or even like encourage me to eat as much as he was eating. And I understand now like where it comes from. It for a long time it like fucked with me because I didn't I thought I would feel embarrassed because I thought that was normal and I thought feeling like stuffed. Like I thought that was how you knew a meal was over. It was very disordered, very dysregulated. And it took a lot of unwiring because that largely is what I was shown. Um, on the flip side, there are people who have very negative reinforcements. I'll use myself too, because like I think I just talked about this too on like a different episode. I had aunts and I had cousins who were just fucking assholes when it came to like food behavior as a woman. And even like I can remember as early as like 6, I remember like feeling judgment around how much I was serving myself at a meal. And they like not only said it was wasteful, they're like, you're gonna get fat. And like these are like adults. So it just like it put it in my head. I mean, I'm a very complex individual. Got both of the eating disorders, the restriction and the overfeeding, which I don't think is necessarily rare. But all this to highlight, like, it was very confusing to not know, like, when do you stop eating? How much is an appropriate amount to get? And even, like, growing up, like, on my mom's side of the family, it's just Southern farm, and, like, we had a lot of, like, big family style meals, and it was very like, there was a heavy association with not getting seconds and that being, like, disrespectful, that being a sign that you didn't enjoy the food. Um Yeah, like, all this to say, like, how I view food is largely it has been largely influenced of, how I grew up, what I saw growing up, and even in relationships, even, like, the men that I've dated in my adult life as opposed to my partner now, like, some of them were very gluttonous and, like, really, like, used food as a strong coping mechanism. Others were very restrictive, like, just straight up anorexic and, like, were very, like, judgmental about food, and it encouraged, different conditioned cues, in and around food for someone like myself, very impressionable. And kinda going back to the learned behaviors, like, many of us learn as kids to eat treats, um, to either, like, offset an uncomfortable emotion, and that's something, like, I see now, like, when I'm around, like, family members or I see, like, if you're soothing a kid, like, sometimes it can very much be like, "Here, do you want a snack?" Like, maybe you're hungry. And my sister, she does an incredible job with her kids where she, like, has a strict, like, they don't have to finish what's on their plate. That was very much how her and I grew up, and, like, that was something she was very intentional about with, like, I don't want them to think that, like, there's a consequence for not finishing. And many people my age, I'm 30 years old, like, many people also felt that there from our parents, that there was this idea that it's, like, it's hurtful and it's disrespectful and it's unacceptable to leave food on the plate when, this costs money and there's an associated value with it. But these associations, I mean, they stick for life. Like that very much I can think to, like, as I got older, when I was in relationships, like, these things I wasn't, like, stopping when I was full, but if, like, I went out on a date or if I was with, a partner, I was like, "No, like, they paid for this, I don't wanna disrespect them, I don't wanna make them feel like I'm wasteful," and, like, it's only become a new thing with Jordan where I'm like, "Okay, like, this needs to be, like, something I'm very present in, and I need to have, like, consideration around, like, do I wanna finish this? It doesn't mean inherently we have to waste it, like, we can put it away, like, some foods, it will keep." Um there's also, like, with the conditioning too, like, knowing that, like, "Oh, I'm on my period, okay, I wanna get ice cream, I wanna get a cookie, I wanna get chocolate," or I had a bad day at work, or it's Friday and I wanna get a few beers, or even knowing, like, I like to eat snacks in front of the TV, like, these are all conditioned cues that can perpetuate and can grow, and you can just make that association that this is what you like to do, when you're doing these activities or at this specific date or time. Now, there's also impaired self-control. Um, I have a client right now who we're, like, digging in deep into this because in her instance, she stretches herself so thin throughout the week with work, gym, social events, traveling, seeing her family, doing favors for other people, like just taking on so much. And what we identified is that food was the only time, the only thing that she felt was pleasurable. She had completely, like, pigeonholed herself into not allowing herself to experience pleasure unless she was eating. And, like, then she kind of built that pathway of, like, okay, like, I know that at the end of the week, if I work hard enough, this is almost justified. Yet she was super unhappy with, like, not seeing the scale weight go down week to week, even though she was, like, following her plan outside of these little overages. And that's where I think a lot of people do it unconsciously. They don't realize that, like, it is a form of self-sabotage. Like, if especially if you realize it, and that's, like, kind of the point I was getting to with her. I was able to kinda show her and frame it like, if you give yourself permission to enjoy things, if that's a walk, if that's, like, doom scrolling for 10 minutes at night, if that's, I don't know, it's getting a manicure, if that's, like, just going to, like, a Whole Foods market or, whatever, what am I trying to say? A farmer's market, Jesus Christ, and, like, letting yourself, like, splurge a little bit, or, I don't know, just reading a book, drawing, like, doing something fucking enjoyable that doesn't have, like, a financial aspect to it. You don't have that excuse that food is the only pleasure. And I don't know, like, for me, like, I have a few different, like, ways that I manage my impulse control, but I do see it very much like inner child, adult me. And adult me is responsible for, like, calling this shit out. And sometimes I do need to be like, hey, I see what you're doing. And it doesn't have to be nasty. It doesn't have to be like, um, self-deprecating or just, like, so, what am I trying to say? It doesn't have to be authoritarian, and it doesn't have to be something where it's, like, a punishment, But just being real with yourself, just being honest, to be like, hey, like, this is why we're doing this. And like, future you is like begging you to stop. And I heard this on a podcast recently with a comedian who's talking about battling addiction and how he was like kind of like it really like landed for me. Um, Only because like I've had this conversation with so many people before around food, and how they're just like, I'm so miserable. I feel like I have no control over my behaviors, and it's just this, perpetual cycle that I can't break. And in this instance, he was talking about how when he was like writing the times where he like about like journaling the times he dismantled his life and like really hit rock bottom. He could just like hear himself like just like reflecting and feeling so much remorse around like, "Man, like, just stop, like, just please don't fuck this up." And he, like, almost paralleled it, like, that is future you, like, asking you, like, "Can you fucking stop? Can you" like, every time you make this decision, whether that's future you in a week, future you in a month, in 5 years, 10 years, like, you're wrecking any potential of what future you can do, of, what your future opportunity is. And I know, like, with addiction, like, there's a whole spectrum of, the type of drug or type of thing that we're talking about. But I know that for so long, like, there were days and weeks and months, years where I just felt like I had no control over my health, how I looked, and it caused me a lot of mental anguish. Like, it caused me a lot of discomfort, and it caused me to hyper focus on aspects of fitness that were no longer healthy because I just felt like, well, the only time I can really get the result I want is by being like almost punitive and like being super restrictive. And I don't know, it wasn't until I zoomed out and really thought about it like, okay, like there's got to be a way that uh, this doesn't have to look so brutal and negative and so much as a punishment. There's got to be a middle ground, that I started to see progress. And that was, I mean, like, honestly, I was back in like 2013, 2014, and it's had its ups and downs, but it took a lot of like cognitive restraint, and a lot of self awareness to be able to zoom out and be like, okay, I know this pattern. I know every time that I do this, it results in this outcome. I feel this way every single time. Like, it never fails. This is not healthy. This is not pleasurable. And this is very much based on a habit that's formed, and inundated. Like, it's indoctrined into us from an early age and then just reinforced by our own behavior and lack of awareness around what it's costing. Before I go headfirst into what I found to be helpful for myself, for clients. I want to close this loop because, like, there's the aspect of like impaired self control that's exacerbated by chronic stress, lack of sleep, mental fatigue, dietary fatigue, just a sense of hopelessness, a lack of connection. And I mean, this also integrates pretty heavily into like your reward sensitivity. Some people's brains light up really, really heavily with food. And that could very well be like in the case of my client, like there was nothing else. Everything was work. There was nothing else that was pleasurable. And, through parsing out, like we were able to find like she didn't feel comfortable including pleasurable things into her life. Like she was taught at an early age, it's like work, work, work. You need to be disciplined. If you need pleasure, it's because you're weak and you're lazy and you're gluttonous. So the only escape she had was food. Food was the only thing that allowed her to feel like this is an acceptable form of pleasure. And I think over time, like you become conditioned, you become numb to the amount of food and the types of food that you need to get that same satisfaction. So I mean, like it's a dead end. And if you like continue to seek out pleasure exclusively through food, I mean, you're gonna end up in a position where you are, morbidly obese. Like you're very heavy, you're very high body fat, and it's gonna affect your health. Or you just feel like you do not have control, and that, I think, for a lot of people then is an perpetuating cycle where you're anxious, you don't trust yourself, then that reinforces like, well, the only escape I have is feeling good. The only thing that makes me feel good is eating. And like, even if that means like, it doesn't result in me getting towards my goal, like it's not a good place to be in. Now, I want to talk about number 4 because that is your environment. Uh, Modern life, it is engineered for overeating. I mean, there are things that are easy to snack on, that are very accessible, that are cheap, that are tasty, they're just easier to access. Portion sizes are massive at most restaurants, and um, even at home meals, like they're much bigger than they used to be. Um, there is this like societal like push to, like, treat yourself, indulge, you deserve it. Um, and it's not necessarily something new, but it's even more so encouraged and, like, it's glamorized on social media, like, overeating behaviors and, like, I don't know, yeah, like, glorifies the word that comes to mind, but, like, the social norms is to encourage it, at parties, holidays, because it's what everyone does. And I mean, very much like you're swimming upstream, against both temptation, but your willpower just being worn down, especially if those around you um, have those kind of habits. And if you're struggling to resist, it's not because you're weak, it's because your surroundings are quite literally pushing you to eat more and to eat more often. Whether it comes from a good place or comes from a place of like someone else wanting to make themselves more comfortable with their food decisions, it still poses a stressor. And the more that you ignore that or you shrug it off and you think, well, it's not that big a deal. I can fight it. I mean, like how many things do you have? How many inputs do you have in your life that are causing the same degree of stress or causing even more? And that's where like when you look at lifestyle, like sleep, stress, medications, the gut, like these are all aspects that will individually pose stressors like poor sleep. It's going to increase ghrelin, it's going to decrease leptin, it's going to increase cortisol, it's going to increase your cravings for highly palatable, high calorie food. Um, your body only has two means in which it can like rest, it can recover: sleep and food. It's not a coincidence that when you're under rested, and even if you sleep 8 hours, even if you get technically a good amount of sleep, it doesn't mean you're recouped. It doesn't mean you're recovered. It doesn't quantify how much stress, how much work you're doing throughout the periods between sleeps. Um, Chronically raised stress, and then hormonal imbalances because of that can absolutely affect where the fat is then stored, making it feel like it's just this uphill battle. And I think I just posted a video today no, it didn't go out today. Tomorrow, I think I'm posting it where I'm talking about women with low estrogen. Like there's often this association that, lower estrogen will allow you to get shredded. It'll allow you to get like really ripped. But the thing is, like, physiologically, in the case that your estrogen is low, and let's say like you're moving into a state of a surplus, even if it's a minimal surplus, like let's say post show, this is going to predispose you to have fat stored viscerally. So in and around the organs, not on your hips, not on your extremities, peripherally. And this is something that we see, it's a means of protection from our body. Our body's taking it as like, okay, well, you're not in a place to protect yourself. Let's protect our vital organs. And when you even look at like medications, there are certain antidepressants, antipsychotics, even different like ghrelin agonists, even different steroids. Um, both fun and not fun, they can exacerbate these cravings, but then also your desire to eat more food, an inability to recover and to get the sleep that you need, which then just becomes this vicious cycle. Now, one of the biggest causal relations between overeating, binging, is fasting. And this is something that we see very commonly with individuals who restrict food. They'll restrict, thinking that, like, okay, if I can just stave off hunger and, go without a few meals, it's okay. I can eat whatever I want, one meal a day. Um, there are people that very much can out-eat their caloric needs in a single meal, and over time, this is just not great for body composition, and it's something I even see in what I do, where individuals will be very insistent, like, "No, I'm not hungry in the morning, I'm gonna eat minimally," yet come nighttime, they wanna eat the house, and they almost justify it, and again, it's a form of self-sabotage, that's very sneaky, and most forms are very sneaky where it's not obvious, where like, this is just how I am. It's just a behavior. And that's where being able to identify it and really call it out for what it is, like the middle is hard to sit in. It's scary because, like, there's no, um it's not sexy. Like, extremes are sexy and they're cool and, like, they, promise instant and fast results. Finding balance, finding structure, slowing down, taking a pause, getting in touch with what you're feeling, how you're feeling, why you're feeling it, like, all of these things, they take presence. They take you stopping what you're doing and stop thinking about the next thing, stop chasing novelty. And I think for a lot of people, this is the root of why they overeat, is because they're unable to pause and, like, be where their feet are. And then from that, like, even if they are, they're like, fuck this. Like, I don't like how this feels. Like, it feels very shameful. It feels very hurtful. Maybe it does, like, cause repressed memories to come up, or ideologies about themselves that they're like, well, I don't like that. I don't like that this is how I am. It's really hard for humans to have a little bit of an identity crisis. And if you're someone who resonates as, like, not even a fitness person, not even a fitness influencer, but if you're someone who resonates with, like, I take care of myself, I'm not fat, I'm not out of shape, I'm healthy, I'm fit oriented, fit focused, which, like, I'm speaking to, like, the individuals who truly, like, who say, like, it's going to be easy for you to coach me. Like, I'm super adherent, and as long as the program works, I'll be able to lose weight. As long as your program's good, but there's not the introspection of, like, what about your behaviors? Like, what if I ask you to do something insane? Are you just going to do it? Like, it could work, but, like, it's very hard to accept an identity collapse, to accept that you're not the person that you think you are. And that's where a lot of people default, and they'll just be like, well, it's the program that sucks. It's the coach that sucks. It's my hormones. It's my age. And, like, don't come at me and be like, hey, you're 30. Like, you don't know what you're talking about. I work with a lot of individuals who are in their 40s, in their 50s, in their 60s. And many of them don't realize that they're able to get better progress than they're currently getting. Many of them come to me and they're like, well, I know, like, I'm not as young as I used to be, and things don't work as well as they have in the past, but I want to give it my best shot. And many of them get such good results because the reality is they were focusing not necessarily on the wrong things, but they weren't focusing enough on the right things. Just gonna close that loop because this isn't like, it's not a later in life podcast. It's not an episode talking about individuals as they get older and the challenges. That should very much be its own podcast, and it deserves that space. But these beliefs, and age aside, like, I've heard it from so many people, with what I do around, like, no, I just am an anxious person. I just can never get sleep. I was talking to a client last night who, she has bitched about her sleep incessantly, and she's on prescription medication. She, like, takes magnesium, and she was coming home last night. She drank, which I'm like, okay, that's gonna for sure mess with your sleep. And she's telling me how, like, on the way home, she's like, I was like, what are you gonna do, like, once you get home? Because it's pretty late, like, where she was. And she's like, yeah, I'll probably, like, do a little bit of work before bed, just so I get tired. I don't want to just get in bed and fall asleep. Um, and, like, I bit my tongue because we've talked about this a few times, and frankly, it wasn't the right place to go into this. But as I heard that, I'm like, how many nights, like, are you telling yourself you're going to keep active, you're going to keep doing activities until you get tired? And then you get in bed and then you're not tired and you just get up and you do activities again, or you get on your phone. It's same conversation. This isn't just one client. This is like a dozen of my clients right now, where, I mean, like, straight up, I told a client Monday, I was like, hey, you're gonna have to prioritize your sleep more so that you can do these workouts, because your sleep is the biggest deterrent here. Like, and she's like, yeah, like, I get up and I get on my phone, like, if I can't fall asleep. I'm like, don't do that. That's your homework. Do not do that. And if you can't not do that, then now this is becoming more of a conscious choice, and this is becoming something we know will help, but now it's a lack of control. And it's a lot easier on the outside when you're talking about these behaviors and giving advice and telling someone, like, hey, this is a big lever. And it would be great if you could just say, hey, don't eat don't eat the thing that's fucking up your adherence. Only eat the things that we talk about, right? It doesn't work like that. It's much more complex. It's much more deep-seated. And that's why I'm making this video, because stress, sleep, lifestyle factors, and just like inundated beliefs about yourself and things that are unchangeable and permanent. These are things that ultimately are holding you back. And if there's one thing I want you to like reflect on, actually, I'm going to say probably several things, so not just one thing, but I guess the thing I want you to reflect on is like, especially in the case where you're noticing you eat for comfort, for relief, for reprieve. If you can pause, maybe it's not during, maybe it's after, or maybe it's just a time where you can really dial down your sympathetic nervous system. You have to be present to do this work, but this work is exactly how you're going to get out of this cycle. And that's truly like what we're trying to do is we're trying to get you out of that gravitational pull of just, this spin cycle of thinking like this is every day for me. There's nothing I can do. I'm subject to what my body wants to do. If you can just sit and in a calm state, just be like, what do I really need? What is it that I'm seeking from the food? Sit with these feelings. Keep them in reality. And I mean, yes, like understanding where they come from, like that's helpful. And I think I've touched on like several points in this episode of like catalyst. But every time you want something and you get it, you keep going back. And that's how I think like people get stuck in this overeating. I'm not going to call it binging, but this overeating cycle where they can't be adherent. Um, and for some, like it does take, like you got to go to cold turkey. Some people don't have the discipline to do that. And that's where like you got to go back to that first question. Like, what is it that you actually need? So I've made several episodes on this specifically, and there's one that like hit really hard with you guys, where I was encouraging them like, think about like the last time you overate or you went off track. Think about the moment right before that, right before you put food in your mouth or you got, undid the jar or whatever, and try to think, what was the rationalization? Because there had to be something. If you were resisting, and then you're no longer resisting, something had to shift. And even if it's as simple as what shifted was I went into a numbed state. I became disassociative. I just blacked out. Like, yes, like I understand. Like I've binged before and I've just been like, I don't even know how this started. And it came from not necessarily something happening, but something turning off, like something internally. I was like, I don't want to be here. I don't want to feel what I'm feeling. For some people, it's not a matter of like, someone making a comment to you or like, your husband like leaving and like not kissing you goodbye, or your kids like making, I don't know, saying something or not doing something, or you getting an email or text. It can be an input in any of these things. Like these are real examples I've heard from individuals. Like I went off track when this happened and then it turned into this. And it's like, yes, that may have been like the activation, like the activating behavior. Like in therapy, it's like ABCs, but there's a belief in the middle of that. There's something that happened internally. And if you can get really clear with like, what belief, like what experience did you have mentally? That's how we get closer to answering, what do you really need? And it might be like, you're not taking care of yourself. You're not loving yourself. You are really strict, like internal judge and critic and sergeant and parent, and you're in control of your body and your decisions, but you're kind of a dick. And that, like, I'm speaking to like how I've lived my life, most of my life. Like this, like revelation for me is like something that I would say it's fairly new in the last 2 years, and it's because like I just felt so defeated in the fact like I can't keep running the ship this way. Like I care about efficiency and productivity, and I want to be the person I can become and show up in my relationships the way that I believe the people I love deserve. And I can't do that when I'm so fucking shitty to myself. Like I can't do that. And taking that responsibility and like saying like, okay, like this overeating, this is actually deep rooted in the fact that I'm not taking care of myself. Like I'm not being honest about what I need. I'm unwilling to give myself what I need, whether that's just time and space to pause and process and feel whatever the fuck you're feeling. That might be the answer. That might be the solution, and it's scary, especially if you've been in this pattern where for so long you just kind of numb out and you just allow these behaviors to take, to put you in autopilot. You allow these beliefs to put you in autopilot. When you really think about like overeating or going off track, there usually is an associated guilt with it. And I'm not talking about someone who's just eating a little bit more than like is on their plan and they're like, I'm hungry and I feel okay with it. Like I'm talking about a very specific segment of my clients, of my previous self, who like would have these impulse reactions with food. And each and every time it was like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, why did you do this? Like, why can't you be more disciplined? And when you really like dig in and look at like how much you're eating, the pleasure that you're getting from it, you realize that you're not even doing it for pleasure. You're doing it to escape. You're doing it to feel something, but you're not doing it with like a quantified reserve of like, if I eat 5 Oreos or I eat a cup of granola, this is going to fix my day. It's just you're eating to feel something. And like I said earlier, like this reward system, it grows and it requires more and more, like exponentially, because the food itself is not a solution. It's just an escape. And if you can think about it almost in the way like, okay, like I'm allowed to eat delicious food. I'm allowed to indulge. I'm allowed to treat myself. But under these conditions, I have to be present. I have to be like consenting to this behavior. It has to be something I actually want to do. It can't be blind. It can't be impulsive. It can't be something that I'm doing to just make myself feel better, with the expectation there needs to be an improvement in outcome. And again, it sounds very ED. It sounds very much like I'm saying, don't eat a lot of food and don't eat foods you enjoy. That is the furthest thing from what I'm saying. For the individuals that are controlled by this, I can say that I've seen it a lot, in my past behavior, but then also with clients, that it is rooted in a strong ability to disassociate. And if you can start by just like letting your feelings kind of come back online, and if that's like, hey, I'm not going to be in a food situation, I'm not going to eat unless I'm fully present. I'm not going to mindlessly eat. I'm not going to graze. I'm not going to do so when I'm under a tremendous amount of stress. Like, do you really enjoy food when you're fucking stressed? I don't. I very much like, I get annoyed by the fact I'm like, this should be pleasurable and it's not because I have too many things going on in my mind. I should have just waited and enjoyed it at a time when stress was a little bit lower. And if that's like a boundary you can make with yourself, like, hey, if I'm not present, what's bound to happen is I will eat not necessarily what I need or what I want. I will eat to escape. I will eat to be further and further away from reality. And that's not aligned with how I want to be. It's not aligned with the goals that I have. It's not aligned with how I want to experience and enjoy food. Because I mean, if you look at it, it's like if these patterns, if they're on repeat and something that are really causing you a lot of mental, unwellness, mental ailment, then like it's gonna it's gonna take reflection. It's gonna take rumination. It's gonna take being able to understand like why these patterns are taking place. And I do think that strongly this is rooted in someone's ability to understand what they're trying to get from a meal. And an exercise I've done for myself, an exercise I've encouraged clients to do is, in the case that they're going to indulge or they're going to have something that is not a part of their plan, then it's time to do it intentionally. And you want to go to this thing, this place that like historically has been, I don't know, kind of dark, kind of like bingey type behavior. And you're not doing it to just overfeed. You're not doing it to necessarily like get a hit of dopamine. It's not about pleasure. It's about reflection. It's about understanding. It's about trying to see like, okay, what am I actually experiencing as I eat these foods that I historically have overeaten a lot of, or eaten to a point of true discomfort. When I started to go into untracked meals, treat meals, cheat meals, meals that were just like, hey, this shouldn't be about keeping a budget calorically. Um, what really made a difference for me was understanding like bite to bite what am I feeling? What am I gaining? What is this experience like? Am I happy? Am I full? Is this delicious? Do I even like this? And I'll tell you a story. Like I had a client who she had been on a fat loss phase, been in a fat loss phase for a while, and she told me she caved and she got like a full-size family bag of M&Ms. And she went home and she started eating them. And she got the big size bag because she's like, historically, I've eaten the whole thing in one go and like it's never been a problem. And because it had been a while since she had had like just straight up candy and she was eating them like very quickly and like in giant handfuls, there was a point where she, like, noticed her teeth and her gums were actually hurting, and some of y'all can probably relate to that if you eat, like, crunchy food, if you fucking eat, like, a ass load of cereal, like, there's a point where you're just, like, assaulting your gums, and she brought it up to me, she's like, it was actually, like it was riveting to be like, "I'm in pain." Like, my gums are, like, actually raw now because the sugar is just, like, soaking into them, and it doesn't feel good, and I love M&Ms, but, like, because of the amount I was eating and, like, the duration I was eating it, like, this eventually became something I was like, "Ah," like, I can't believe, like, this is, like, supposed to be pleasurable, it's supposed to be something enjoyable, and I'm actually causing the inside of my mouth harm, like, I'm hurting myself right now. And it was such, like, an eye-opening, like, note that she left, and, like, on our next call, we were talking about it, and she's like, it gave me, like, a parameter, like, I really just need an amount, that's well under what I had eaten. Like, I could probably get by with, like, even, like, just an individual or even, like, a mini because that's not going to hurt me, but, like, it was almost the experience that she had. It was the first time that she had, like, cut out M&Ms for, like, I don't know, I think it was, like, 2 months, and, like, just the fact that, like, she was able to see, like, this really was something that, like, for her, it was, like, on a weekly basis, like, she would have them in the office, she would have them when she got home, she would stop at the gas station, and she would get a pack, and, I mean, like, sounds like cigarettes, but, uh, when she started to realize, like, "Wow, this is hurting my body. I don't enjoy this. This isn't nearly the pleasure that I thought," it demystified, it brought the novelty down around that specific food, and it really, like, pointed her in the direction of, like, I should kinda look at all foods like this. I should kinda think about if something's, like, heavily salted, if it's, like, really, really rich, am I still enjoying this? And that for me has been, like, pivotal in understanding, like, how many bites do I need of something, like, before I am like, "Okay, this is, like, it's a bit much." Um, at Jordan's gym, with a he's a client who always is making baked goods for us, and she'll give us, like, full ass, like, cheesecakes, and Jordan will eat, like he'll, like, mow through, like, a third or a fourth, and I know, like, I can keep up and, like, I can eat a fourth, but I'm gonna be pretty uncomfortable, like, I'm gonna go to bed and I'm gonna be like, "Okay, I feel like shit, I'm probably not gonna sleep well because it's a lot of calories, probably gonna wake up the next morning," and I know at this point, like, these are the cost of eating that, and there was one point where I just, like I was like, "Hey, cut me like an eighth or even cut me like a 16th of one, or actually I'll just have like 4 bites." And I was able to quantify it. I'm like, after like 4, maybe even 6 bites of something I really like, I'm good. Like what is there to like the pleasure ceiling? I've hit it. I've attained it. What are we doing here? And I think for a lot of people, it's scary to realize how much further they're going past what's actually needed to get that hit of pleasure, and that hit of pleasure is fine from food. I love food. I love nice food. I love going out to eat. I love highly palatable food, and when you start to quantify it, like, "Hey, like, how much of this actually is needed to have a good time, to enjoy this?" It's not nearly as much as you think. It's definitely not as much, especially if you're not in it, if you're disassociating, if you're just mindlessly doing it, it's way less than you think. This isn't a substitution for getting a diagnosis, getting medical advice. This is not medical advice, it's not recommendations. It is just chit chat. It is just informational. It's just to let you know that, like, there is a reason that you do this thing. And it can feel shameful, but acknowledging that you're doing it, I mean, that is the first step. And then from there, understanding, like, where did this come from? What does this give me? Like, we as humans, like anything we do it because we get something from it. And even if doing something or not doing something gets us out of an outcome, there's still some kind of reward. We're either getting something or we're avoiding something. And I think if you can slow down, and I think if you can force yourself, if you can turn on your parental voice to you and almost think about like, hey, like what's going on? Why is it that we find ourselves here again and again? It's not about just saying, oh, here, let's replace this with journaling or let's like, go on a walk. I mean, those things, they can be helpful. They can be practical. It's not to say you can just replace the habit immediately overnight and be like, yeah, let's journal or let's go on a walk. But there's a reason you're finding yourself in this same position. And if you're not able to acknowledge that you're in this position, but you are in this position, then let's start there. Because once you name it, once you name the problem, then you can begin to look for the solution. And if you're overeating, you're not alone. Many, many, many people struggle with this. And it is something I can tell you, like you can overcome it. You can develop better and different habits, even if it's super, just so indoctrinated into your being and your beliefs around yourself. You guys, I hope this was helpful. Hope you enjoyed it. As always, thank you guys for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.